All right, we're live. Bobby Manning here with Kevin McCormick covering the 76ers. Welcome back to Dome Theory here on the CLNS Media Network. We're going to preview the series. We're going to preview the inauguration. I don't know about that one, but let's get into the 76ers here. This series is getting underway. I love that we have a series between these two teams so early in the year. They're the two best teams so far in the Eastern Conference, and Kevin McCormick covers them with ESPN Radio. Great to have a voice of Philly here. I struggled all morning thinking of who I could have on from a Philly angle, because even though you just have these two fan bases always just throwing trash at each other and verbal assaults and the most vile back and forth you can imagine on the internet. I haven't gotten to, talk to a lot of people who cover Philly on a regular basis, give us some good insight on the team. And they have a good team this year. They've surprised me so far with the system that they've implemented defensively. They're a top 5 defensive rating team to start this year. Joel Embiid is 6th in Basketball Reference's MVP voting. So this team is intriguing. Now, Charles Barkley said they're a contender and Boston isn't. I don't agree with that one necessarily. Boston's a half game up on Philadelphia. I don't know how you can grasp that so far, but I do contend that Philadelphia has been the better defensive team so far to start this year. There's no doubt about that.
Oh, no doubt. And that just goes mainly with the, when you have a team led by Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid who really pride themselves on that side of the floor, it's not very shocking that the Sixers have been the dominant defensive force that they've been. The main thing that's going on, like you said, is just how night and day difference it's been from last season in terms of how the offense has looked. When you look at the additions of guys like Seth Curry and Danny Green, who really opened up the floor for Embiid and Simmons to create lanes, not to mention the hiring of Doc Rivers has done wonders for Tobias Harris on the floor. He's really starting to play at that near all-star level that he played as a member of the Clippers. And like you said, these are two top teams that are really going to make some noise in the East. So should be a good matchup and a good series.
Yeah, and we might get Tatum back for the second game, which is what we want to see. We want to see these teams going at each other at full strength. And these last 2 weeks were weird for these teams. Tatum comes down with COVID. Robert Williams on the Boston side is back for the first time tonight with COVID. He actually had a pretty scary experience, it looked like, with his whole family getting it, him coming down with the symptoms. And he had been one of the best bench players, plus minus, net rating, all that stuff in the NBA so far, Boston's best center. So it'll be good to have him back. But he had trouble guarding Embiid in that preseason matchup that we watched between the two teams. You mentioned you had gone to some of these preseason games. Tristan Thompson wasn't available for that one, so we'll actually get to see Thompson versus Embiid here. That's a big reason. Many would think that Boston brought in Thompson, have that big body defensive presence against an Embiid. And Enes Kanter did a good job against Embiid last year in that series that Boston ended up sweeping, having someone who could front, use some quick hands. Kanter's not the best pick and roll defender in the world. Like Thompson gives you a little more in that aspect. But I'm excited that Boston has someone who's a little more defensive minded overall. Now that Philly's getting in a little more pick and roll action, better ball movement, better spacing, all that stuff this year. Thompson hasn't blown me away so far. But what do you expect that matchup to look like between Thompson, between Embiid, the way Philly's playing to start this year?
To be completely honest, Joel Embiid has been at a whole nother level this year. Him being at the top of the MVP conversation right now is more than earned. If you look at all the performances he's put on this year, there's yet to be a defensive matchup where teams have been able to really slow him down. Even if you look at that Miami game, Eric Spoelstra was throwing triple teams at Joel Embiid at times. If he was
triple? Three?
At times, yeah. They tried to zone up on him, and he was still getting everything he wanted on the floor. He has just been a man determined, and like I said at the top, that improved spacing has done wonders for him. Now, when you look at past years, teams have been able to do a better job of being able to double him, but with having guys like Curry and Green out there, you can't really sag off the perimeter threats like you could in previous years, which has allowed him to just attack matchups one-on-one. And there's yet to be a center matchup this year with Joel Embiid who's been able to slow him down. So in terms of that matchup, I still heavily favor Embiid.
For sure. And you mentioned the spacing. Seth Curry comes in. One of the more underrated additions of the offseason. I looked at them and I said, all right, our two shooters, Danny Green, Seth Curry, going to change this whole thing up? Well, if you have a guy who's shooting 60% on catch and shoot threes, that's worthy of switching up the situation at hand there. They haven't had spacers like this. Korkmaz was probably as close as it came last year. And, Green's pretty good in that aspect, 37%. But Curry is really the key right now, just lights out. Although he did come down with COVID, he missed some time over the last few weeks. We've seen guys come back slow, come back hampered by that. I don't know if you get a sense of what his experience was like. He might have just been asymptomatic and he's just going to come back and keep rolling. But other guys have had trouble with this. So that'll be one of the things I'm watching for tonight is, does Curry just keep playing lights out, keep drilling shots left and right for this team? Or is it going to be a slow integration back for him from COVID?
I would most likely assume it's going to be that slow start. I mean, he hasn't played since January 6th, so we're looking at about 2 weeks since he's been on an NBA floor. In terms of how he's been feeling, Doc Rivers has mentioned that he's kept in touch with him through the whole process of while he cleared protocol, and he said Curry's felt fine. You've looked at his Instagram stories here and there. He's been quarantined in his basement, and he still had some workout equipment there. So I think he's been doing an okay job at trying to keep himself as physically ready as he can while he's in the situation that he's in. But if you look at the guys who were also out, with players like Tobias Harris and Shake Milton, who also had to miss time due to contact tracing, when they came back, they didn't miss a beat. So hopefully Curry can kind of fall into that suit as well. But, it definitely will be a big thing to watch as they try and integrate him back into the system, if he'll be able to keep up at times.
So you mentioned the shooting. We know the defensive rotations have been tighter, and Embiid's coming back on a mission. That the sweep at the hands of Boston last year definitely impacted him. Along with snubs and, among the top players in the NBA. The last year just seemed to have a extra push on his drive, and the conditioning certainly looks better with him. He's passing better out of double teams, triple teams, as you mentioned. So things just look different there. Obviously, some credit to Doc Rivers, defensive-minded coach, who has definitely helped on that end of the floor there. New voice probably for the team to tune into as well. But when you look at the team, when you talk to these guys, when you watch them close up, what's different to start this year?
There's just been a major culture change from top to bottom. I mean, as much as we can talk about the overturn of the roster that they've seen in the short offseason, you can look at the organization as a whole from top to bottom, from bringing in a guy like Daryl Morey to be your president of basketball operations, to not only
talk about that, yeah,
hiring Doc Rivers, but Doc Rivers also brought in a phenomenal staff behind him. You're looking at guys like Sam Cassell, Dave Yeager, who, they could be head coaches in their own right, defensive specialists like Dan Burke, Popeye Jones. I mean, you name it. It's just so many new, fresh, eyes and ears on this team, and it's really paid dividends.
For sure. Now, Daryl Morey, always active, always aggressive. I thought this was going to be the team before the season started. It almost felt inevitable that Ben Simmons hasn't been the greatest fit with Joel Embiid. That's been evident. Last year they lose him to the injury, so they never got that look at what they would both end up accomplishing in a playoff series together there last year. But it felt like if you had the opportunity to trade for James Harden, put him in a pick and roll combo with Embiid, become an elite ball handler, elite shooter, elite setup guy that Philly has needed in recent years, it was just going to be a no-brainer. And if you're Houston, you want to start with a cornerstone player, a guy who's been a number one pick, one of the best defenders in the league like Ben Simmons has been. So it was stunning that they couldn't come to a deal. Now, Harden had his eyes set on Brooklyn. I'm sure there's some agent talks. I'm sure there's some pressure behind the scenes to make that go the way he wants it to go. But we also know that Houston wanted to just clear the books and, get a guy like Oladipo who could be off the payroll by the end of the year. And, we won't answer the Houston questions here. I have no clue why they didn't look at Philly and say that's the way we want to go. But now you have a scenario. Remember it with Boston 2 years ago when Tatum's name, Brown's name were thrown around and Anthony Davis rumors. It certainly had an impact on the Lakers when they went through all of 2019 with the Kuzmas and the Ingrams and the Lonzo Balls having trade rumors floating over their heads. Well, now you have Ben Simmons, who's going to play out next few years of his career in Philadelphia. It looks like now that this trade has come to pass, he's part of the core. But it feels like he was this close to being dealt. If Houston would play ball there, he was going to go to Houston and be cast off from this team. And it's always an awkward position when a guy gets left off. What's that going to be like? What's it been like so far? I know he's averaging 11 and 10, assists and rebounds the last few games, so it hasn't hurt his play too much. But it's an awkward situation when that happens.
I definitely would say it's an awkward situation, but I think when you have a leader like Doc Rivers, I think it softens that blow a little bit. There definitely could have been, some ripples at time. Ben Simmons did have some rough outings leading into the James Harden trade actually happening. So who knows? It could have had an effect on him mentally on the court and off the floor, while all of these trade rumors were swirling over his head and around the team. But moving forward, I hope that he takes this as a confidence boost, with Daryl Morey kind of drawing that line in the sand of where they weren't going to cross to acquire Harden. Hopefully that, makes Ben feel a little better about himself that, hey, we still think you're a guy here. We still think you're a valuable piece and you can be something moving forward. So Doc Rivers has spoken about him with it. He said Ben's been feeling good about it. Ben spoke about it after a game last week and kind of said, it's all part of the business. Star players get traded for star players. It's just the way of the league. So hopefully he takes this as a confidence boost and, really tries to take it to his critics and show that he can take to a new level offensively. We saw against Memphis, he took 2 3-pointers and took the most jump shots in a game I think I'd seen him take in years. So hopefully he uses this as an opportunity to grow and understand that he's going to be a key piece here and that he still needs to, drive and push himself and, prove to people that they made the right move and staying put and wanting him around.
So how does he fit in right now? And now I'm looking at the numbers. I've watched the team a little bit. I love what Tyrese Maxey has done as a secondary ball handler on the team, coming in those bench units. And it feels like Simmons rotates into some of those bench rotations to be a bit of a ball handler, a playmaker with some of the bench guys like Danny Green and others there. That's why Embiid just has this monster on-off number, and Simmons is a little more neutral. I think he's at 0 plus minus between per 100 possessions. So he's shooting threes. That's a plus. I think he's taken 5 to start this year. He's hit 1. So you're going in a good direction with that as well. But you always think a guy who doesn't shoot a ton, guy who gets most of his looks in the paint, where Embiid operates as well, a driver, a transition player who isn't as good in the half court. There's still some awkwardness between the top 2 players on this team, which makes me hesitate to say that they're a finals contender, even though the early returns are looking good here. I think it comes down to your top talent. I think it comes down to how well your elite players mesh. And I still don't see a great level of cohesion between those two. Now, Embiid had a great press early in the year where he talked about them playing off each other, how it's going better to start this year. Simmons' numbers are good. I think he's 50% from the field. Ginormous rebounding, assist numbers. So he's fitting in, but there's still that scoring question, where he's going to get his, how he's going to play off Embiid, because obviously this is Embiid's team at this point.
It's tricky to say where he can find his footing. If you look in the beginning of the year, it really seemed like he had found his footing in terms of just being the guy who wants to drive and kick. It's something he's done at an elite level since coming to the NBA. Even though he doesn't shoot a ton of threes, he's created a lot of threes with the attention that he draws. So having guys like Danny Green and Seth Curry and Tobias Harris, having that original starting 5 back out there will allow him to show that he can still be an elite playmaker, and that's how he will affect the game on offense. His scoring numbers have taken a dip, but one thing that has increased is him getting to the free throw line more. So he's closing in on a career year in terms of getting to the line on a nightly basis. So if he can continue to keep that up and improve that percentage, that will help up his points a little bit. And just playing out in transition, that's what he does best. He's a freak athlete with his size and speed, and very few players in the NBA right now can slow him in the open floor. So Doc Rivers has spoken a lot about playing at an increased tempo. So if Simmons can continue to just dominate in the open floor and take those opportunities to put his head down and get to the rim, continue to draw contact and get to the free throw line more, and just create that space and kick the shooters for wide open threes, that's where he finds his footing within this offense.
So we brought on a new intern here in CLNS Media. Shout out to him, Jackson. He'll be helping us in the post-game show tonight. I was talking to him the other day, and I said he's a 76ers fan. He's from the Philly area, goes to Temple. He says, I'm saying, would you rather have Tyrese Maxey? Would you rather have Peyton Pritchard among these rookies that we've seen so far? I'm excited for that matchup here. He hesitated and leaned Pritchard so far. And I think the returns on those two so far Pritchard has gotten the better of the two. So, Maxey had that one huge game where the team was down to 8 and he scored 39, got to shoot upwards of 30 times. So Pritchard hasn't had that experience yet. He almost got it last week when the Celtics were down to 8 players, but never got the chance. He's been great so far. I'd say 10 out of 12 games. He's been great, pushes the pace, awesome playmaker. But Maxey, I look at him. I look at Emmanuel Quickly out of Kentucky, and I say again, 2 Kentucky guys, just like Tyler Hero last year, who went a little bit overlooked and look like they're going to be one of the better players in this draft. Maxey's floater game is awesome. He gets to the rim. His dribbling is phenomenal. He's a playmaker. Defends, as we knew he would coming in. Now, shooting isn't his thing. That's something Philadelphia probably wishes they could get a little more out of from their first-round pick. But Maxey, Pritchard, watching those 2 early this year, what do you think that matchup's going to look like?
It should be interesting. I haven't seen much of Pritchard. I've seen a lot of, just box score watching and stuff, and he's definitely been a name that stuck out in this rookie class of guys that if they did a redraft would most likely get drafted a little higher. But in terms of Tyrese Maxey, he has been an absolute steal. And like you said, those Kentucky guards, they just come out ready. And when Tyrese Maxey got to Philadelphia, when he was asked about Coach Cal, he said that Coach Cal does a phenomenal job of getting these guys ready for the NBA. So I think what he does in Kentucky plays a huge factor of, why these guys come in and are able to produce on day one. But Maxey's game, it's all downhill. He's just got a great motor. He's got a great feel for the game. Like you said, he came out and had that 39-point outburst against the Nuggets. There's yet to be a moment that he's been too scared of, and he's taken full advantage of every minute on the floor. And the jump shot isn't there yet, but it's coming along. He shows a lot of confidence of just stepping into the wide open ones and taking them. So hopefully they start to fall. But in terms of his whole offensive package, I mean, he has the potential to be a really solid 3-level scorer. He plays well in the pick and roll, has a nice mid-range game. You mentioned the floater. That's great to watch. And just he has a phenomenal first step and just a nice burst to the rim that allows him to create space and, really get some athletic finishes. So it should be a fun matchup with the rookie guards.
We're going to enter a golden era of the floater, I think. We're seeing teams just pack into the paint, play drop defense. Philly does it. Boston does it a little bit here. They're not as much, but teams are packing the paint, trying to take that away. And guys like Maxey, Quickly, those floaters have just been so beautiful to start this year around the league, and teams are going to need them. Shot blocking's a big deal now. You're seeing some themes that players like Maxey and those guys are going to be able to thrive in this league for years to come because of that attribute of their game. Now, the Celtics, I've mentioned what I'm looking for from Philly. Can they stop Embiid? Defensively, do the Celtics stack up to par with Philadelphia in this matchup? I've been frustrated with Boston's defense to start this year. If you're looking at the Celtics in this series, what do you think they're going to do to test Philly? What are you going to watch from Boston's angle that you want to see Philly be able to handle?
The main thing for me, especially heading into the night with no Tatum, is trying to contain Jaylen Brown, because he's been a guy that's been playing at a great level. He's, continues to take more leaps as his career develops, which, is a great sign to see for Boston fans. But he's definitely a guy to watch. You just got Kemba Walker back. He's going to be another one to watch. So just containing the star players, I think, should be the major focus, just because looking at these rosters in terms of depth, for the first time in a while, I think the Sixers might actually be a deeper team than the Celtics. So if you can contain that star power and really take advantage of your depth, I think the Sixers could walk away with this series.
Wednesday, which is tonight, 7 o'clock, these teams get at it. 7:30 on Friday. He is Kevin McCormick. You can follow him at KevinMCC973 on Twitter with ESPN Radio in Philly. Great to talk to you. Great to get to know you a little bit here. And we'll chat on Twitter. We'll talk about the game. And it's about to be a big speech in America, so we'll let everybody go and watch that. Thanks for watching. Anybody who tuned in live here, you can get it in full at CLNS Media if you didn't get the first part of it. And make sure you subscribe to Dome Theory as well for the podcast version of the Spotify, Stitcher, all those places, iTunes. Appreciate you, Kevin. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me on.